All right, so here's Metasploit, and all the Metasploit tutorials in my class used these really old FTP clients and stuff, and so I checked to try to find something newer that's Metasploitable. And so I found something that's pretty good, an Apache product that's vulnerable. So you get a Windows machine, like that cloud machine or anywhere, and turn off the firewall, install Java, and install this thing called Apache ActiveMQ. And I don't know what it does, but the old version is vulnerable, and that's all I cared about. So when you install the old version, you started at the command line, and now it's listening on port 8161. So you can see now your machine is listening and vulnerable. So now you can attack it. Metasploit runs on various platforms, but I almost always use it on Linux. So you can just download a file here. It gives you MSF install from their website, and then just run that. Change it to executable and run it. That will install the Metasploit attack framework on your server. And the point of Metasploit is it makes it extremely easy to run pre-programmed attacks. So it's nothing more than choosing options off a menu. Now, of course, it doesn't run new attacks, but people put them in Metasploit about the time that they're patched. So you can't usually break into fully patched systems with Metasploit, but you can break into old versions of things. So you also put Nmap on the server, which is pretty much essential for any kind of pen testing just to orient you. And then you scan the server. So you can do Nmap, and I'm scanning just the one port of interest here, 8161, and it'll tell you it's able to reach a Jetty server. And the point of this is to make sure you've got the cloud firewall down and whatever else you have to have. This tells you if you have your network properly set up. If it's open, then it was able to reach the server and get a response from it. And now to exploit it, you just run MSF console. And once that's here, you can search. So since it's an active MQ target, I can search for that. And I will find there are 5 known attacks for this target. And it gives you the date and a summary of information. And the one we're going to use is this one here. That is excellent. It tells you how good they are, by the way. The excellent ones work almost all the time and usually don't crash the target. The others have a chance of failure of various ways. So I try this excellent one. I use that exploit. I just give it the full name. And then you can see the options for the exploit. And it will show you this has to have a password and a path, but there are default values and a port. And the only thing that it needs that it doesn't already have a default value for is our hosts, which is the IP address of the target to attack. And here, so this is the options of the exploit itself, where you get to execute some commands on the server. And this is the payload, which are the commands you'll execute. And by default, if you don't set something else, it'll make a reverse TCP shell, the kind I was talking about in the early Splunk. This is what happens usually when you take over a server. You run a reverse shell, so the server now sends an outgoing connection back to the command and control center. The reason you do it that way is that a laptop typically allows any connection out because you're supposed to be able to surf the internet and such, but it will reject traffic coming in that's not expected. So you make reverse shells where the target phones home. So here it's going to phone home. I have to give it the address to go to, which is the address of my command and control server, my Linux machine, and I have to give it a port number. By default, it'll use port 4444, which, by the way, is a pretty miserable port to use in a penetration test because everybody knows that's the default for Metasploit, and they're probably watching for it. So it's more subtle to change this to 80 or 443 or something, so your traffic will mix in with innocent traffic. But anyway, you just have to set the IP address of your Windows target and your Linux attacker and run it, and this will then give you a command shell. So now you have a Windows, this is a Linux machine running Metasploit, and now you have a Windows command prompt. C users administrator, you can now execute Windows commands here on the other system. And so you can do various things, and for a flag, I just had you look at the list of running processes to see Java. But you'll be able to do all the things you might want to do on that server. This is what Metasploit does, and it has hundreds of attacks. And you can, of course, write your own. And if you go on here, you can actually add a custom exploit and write your own module with Metasploit. And you can use Metasploit to make standalone malware, Trojans, that will then be executables, which you then email to people. And if they run it, then you can control their box. And you can do many, many things with Metasploit and extend it. It's a standard tool used by pen testers to do the simpler attacks. Although, you know, all of antivirus will totally catch anything that comes straight from Metasploit. So you have to learn how to obfuscate things or use living off the land attacks where you don't use any malware, you just use built-in Windows system tools. But anyway, Metasploit is one of the foundational tools to get you started in pen testing. So let me stop that one.